What's up, people?
Wow, hello. Oh my god.
Here again with Steven Zapata.
Can't believe it.
All right, I'll jump right into it. So something cool's happening. It's over at CubeBrush. I think it's Mark Brunette. He's running this. Something called Art War.
It's the art war.
War of Arts.
It's the art war.
Let me just read the brief real quick.
War. War.
All right, Steven.
War.
Okay. Basically, the rules are you pick either a fantasy or sci-fi as your contest topic and create the most epic champion the art world has ever seen. Only him, her, it will be able to bring back peace to the community, to the art community. So basically, the art community is at war, and this character is supposed to Stop laughing.
I'm not. It's a
funny idea.
It's a laugh.
I mean, a great idea. I'm going to join the contest. And then your champion can have weapons and tools and can be monster or human, creature, alien, whatever, depending on the side that you pick, whether it's fantasy or sci-fi. And I'll have the link in the description because you have to sign up for the forum and you make a forum post saying I'm on the 2D or 3D contest part, and then you describe your character, and then you basically have to be pretty active and participate, so you got to start posting now. You can't just post everything last minute and show your progress. That way you have a pretty good community effort, and that's really good, by the way, for exposure. So whatever it is that you want to do. But anyway, I wanted to make a kind of discussion about this because when I saw this, I was really excited, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. I mean, it's an opportunity for people to, including myself, to exercise our art, creativity and all that. So it's fantasy versus sci-fi. Now,
does the side that wins the war subjugate and oppress the other side? Like, if fantasy wins, is no one ever allowed to make sci-fi again?
Let me check the rules.
In the whole art community?
Yeah. The rules. That's part of it.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot at stake.
Yeah. So I mean,
this is really important.
You really have to pick a side here.
And pick wisely.
Yeah. I'll probably pick fantasy. But it had me thinking. It's like, okay, if it's sci-fi fantasy, if I was to do it, what would I do if I picked, fantasy or sci-fi? And it's like, a lot of us really, when we're doing these things, we tend to go the cliche route. What is each thing? What's popular in sci-fi? What's popular in fantasy? We tend to do that, right? You're mocking me. Stop it.
I'm agreeing.
No,
that's agreeing sounds.
It's late at night. Get away from me.
I'm not even close.
I'm gonna get the measuring tape. You're about 4 inches.
Don't let my agreeing sounds throw you off. Just continue as usual and let me agree.
I really just regret every time you're here.
Hey, you're the one who asked me to come here.
I know, and it's always a mistake.
I was at home in my oxygen chamber, feeling good.
Anyway, so I'm probably going to be editing a lot out of this.
Good.
But so I'm thinking like, okay, so let's define what each thing. What does it? Yeah. What does it mean for something to be sci-fi? What does it mean for something to be fantasy? So I just kind of broke things down and stop.
Agreeing sounds.
Yeah, I don't need those. And so basically, we're gonna just have a discussion on each one. So we're gonna kick it off with sci-fi and then go into fantasy, basically covering what we think. And our opinions are just opinions. It's not like what we say is the final word on what sci-fi is, right?
Yes. Please remember, they are just opinions that are correct.
That are correct. And so we'll just talk about what makes each thing, and then whatever. So
cool. Here's
what I have.
Sci-fi.
Science fiction. This summer, lots of sound effects, blue lights, giant ships, and technology. All right. All right, here's my conclusion about science fiction. And it's like, after a lot of thinking, and I think, because there's a fine line. Anything could be either sci-fi or fantasy if you just change a few things, right? Because you look at Star Wars, it's got sci-fi elements like ships and lightsabers and weapons, but at the same time, there's a fantasy element in terms of the Force. So it's like, okay, so my conclusion is that typically in science fiction, it's some kind of technological response to a physical scenario, right? So it's, if there's a black hole, like in the movie Interstellar, or if there's time travel or zero gravity, alternate dimensions, post-apocalypse, teleportation, mind control, generation ships, etc., or you're messing with reality, then you have a technological response, usually some kind of
a ship, a gun, or a weapon, or a
Death
big
Star
thing that glows.
Usually with blue lights.
Yeah, and it goes.
And often taking place in a futuristic scenario.
Can't avoid that word, futuristic.
Yeah, so you've read a lot of sci-fi, right?
Some
sci-fi anthologies and whatnot.
Sure, yeah, I've read a amount of sci-fi in my life.
So how do you feel about this kind of conclusion? Technological response to physical scenario?
I think that's about right, especially with short stories and a lot of that. You see a lot of it is based on a particular scientific thing that is happening and then a technological solution to that. Not to say that the characters aren't a big part, but in a lot of, for example, Alistair Reynolds' work, he really blends the characters and their whole nature into that sort of technological response. His characters are shatterling clones that have been traveling the universe for thousands and thousands of years, archiving data in their meta minds or whatever.
Right.
Doesn't get much more heady than that.
Cool.
So your characters can also be a part of that technological response. They don't just necessarily have to be the guy driving the ship or something like that,
Yeah, and I think that's what ties everything together, and it's the story that we can somehow relate to, whether it's the characters being a human or some kind of humanoid or something, because it can't just be like an amorphous blob and expect us to connect with it, right? I mean, that's really
unless you're Arthur C. Clarke and you're writing Light from Other Days, in which case you can get away with making an amorphous blob that we connect with.
But in terms of connecting with the mass audience, you really have to get a couple key points, and I think connecting with a human audience is key. But anyway, so if we just take that mindset and jump into like, okay, so how does it look? Because us as visual artists, we have this opportunity to make cool, beautiful artwork. And so what's the typical production design? And I sort of made a list, and you find this in movies, anime, cartoons, comics, etc. And here's what I have. So you have often hard surfaces, for like armor and whatever. So it ranges from like sleek, product-like to like machined, kind of grungy look, depending
more like
on
Star Wars.
Yeah. And then sometimes that kind of surfacing, like of product design surfacing, is mixed with organic. So if you look at like Evangelion, where you have like the things look like they have blood inside, right? So it adds a kind of organic element. And there's some mixtures of like cyborgs and stuff. So yeah, I think hard surfaces, sleek, shiny, versus the grungy. And then you have a lot of techie things, computers, AI, human augmentation, projected reality. And I think this all kind of ties back to, the human need to kind of explore, because like giant ships, things out there, what's beyond the horizon, what's beyond the frontier. So
it's like what could be out there or what might we become.
It's deep, man.
Oh yeah, I'm a deep guy.
All right. So anyway,
Don't deny it. Don't deny that.
It evokes a sense of exploration and wonder, right? And oftentimes these themes are expressed with action, like fast-moving, high-speed chases and fights.
The ship go fast.
The ship goes very hyper-speed fast.
It goes almost at the speed of light.
Almost Alcabuary.
It's sublight. It's a sublight ship.
So yeah, I mean, like, so that's like kind of the visual milieu in terms of everything. But the environments, typically are space, planets, our planet,
super advanced cities,
alien landscapes, inside ship hangars. That's like every ArtStation portfolio. No offense. Engineering bays, mech shops and whatnot. Sure. Anyway, so here's a list of like examples that are science fiction. So you got Star Wars, right? Which we talked about. Half-Life 2. It's not too far in the future, but it's still got futuristic elements. You have the gravity gun. That alone makes it science fiction. And of course, the whole like alien thing where they teleport a bunch of aliens accidentally onto the Earth, whatever. Interstellar. So long distance travel, time, space issues where, time happens differently in different places.
For sure.
Avatar, you got a new world, and you can augment your human body into an avatar, right?
And that's a good mix of advanced technology and a very natural environment. It's the whole hinging of that. So always a good contrast there.
Right on. And we were talking about this earlier, and you pointed you brought up a good point in that fantasy, and we'll get to that in a moment, is often more natural, and where sci-fi is the opposite. More constructed, manufactured laser beams, right? Laser beams. The Matrix, one of my favorite movies, probably my favorite actually.
It's a worthy one.
I liked all of them. I liked Reloaded and Revolutions.
That's fine. You can like whatever you want, even if it's bad.
Oh God. Okay. So yeah, futuristic post-apocalypse, plus a little bit of mysticism because he's got these powers outside of the Matrix. So spoiler warning.
Definitely a religious angle on the Matrix too.
So Dune, that's a fun one, right?
For sure.
Futuristic. And here's what I wanted to mention is like what ties these in terms of how it's relevant to us as humans. It's like, okay, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, in a lot of these movies it's about resources, dominance, security, safety, protection, survival, freedom. So freedom is in the Matrix. Resources like Dune, the spice must flow, but also mixed with survival. Avatar, that's resources. What is it called? Unobtainium.
Unobtainium.
Right? Yeah. And so
Transformium and Transformers, which is
it really?
It is.
No.
Transformium.
Oh my
What
God.
Have we done? What have we done?
Survival, like Interstellar. He's kind of going out there to find a way to solve the problem of gravity. And it's all like this sense of human survival, one way or another. But it's still mixed in with the sense of exploration. So there's like a joy you get out of doing that, but at the same time the core of it all.
Yeah, I think like the end of Interstellar.
Right.
It's kind of the whole send-off for that movie.
Right.
That joy of just wanting to go out there and be that.
Yeah.
And see what's out there and find it all. And I want to say for environments, like we said, space, planets, ship hangars, engineering bays, all that stuff are definitely tropes and classic parts of sci-fi, but consider when you're doing your pictures, when you're in a world that's going to have a lot of sci-fi output, try to find an interesting angle on it, because any sci-fi world is still going to have a lot of what we need as people too. If you're looking for a more unique place to set your sci-fi picture, what does a sci-fi police station look like? What do delis look like in a sci-fi world? All these things are probably still going to be around to some capacity, and you could put a twist on it that might help you stand out. A lot of what I remember about Blade Runner, for example, is because of that. I remember most of the sci-fi elements that I remember from Blade Runner are the market with all the food and the street food and how it got sci-fi'd up.
Oh, dude, I'm hungry.
Yeah, for real.
Let's go to In-N-Out.
But all that stuff sticks in my mind because it's things that I'm familiar with and I don't see too often going through the sci-fi lens.
Right.
And that stuff sticks with people.
So that goes back to resources in a way, because that ties in with our needs, like like I just got hungry because you mentioned that. Right, so yeah, you can hit the senses. We don't have the ability to make people smell your environment yet, but yeah. Anyway, so these are elements to think about if you're going to do this contest, the art war contest. If you're going to do something sci-fi, it's very tempting to just make your space marine with a giant gun, and it's always fun. It is. But if
it never stops being fun.
If you were to come at it from a different angle and say, okay, well, let's figure out a physical scenario that you have to come up with a technological response to. So if you start with that, I feel like you're onto something different and unique. Whereas, maybe the physical scenario is, I don't know, a giant earthquake splits the earth into two. I don't know, something like that. And that already starts to develop like, okay, so how are they going to survive? What are they going to need to go explore why it happened? Or what is the temperatures are going to be like? Etc. So things like that will start to give more plot and setting to your presentation. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thumbs up.
You just gave a thumbs up, for real.
And I said it.
So moving on to fantasy, I'll let you kick this one off.
Fantasy. Do you have wind chimes?
I'll add wind chimes.
Okay, good. Fantasy. Okay, good. That was good. What makes something fantasy? And damn it, I forgot that you wrote that. So what makes something fantasy? We have a lot of preconceived notions. There's definitely a lot in the zeitgeist. Is it sexy K-pop elf girls in bikini armor? I posit this question. I'm not saying yes or no. Is it? It could be. It might be, or there might be other stuff. There might be some other stuff.
No.
There's always medieval armor, orcs, and dragons. But no, fantasy is, again, if you're taking sci-fi from a more futuristic angle, of course fantasy often feels like it would be happening in the past, quote unquote. But fantasy often occurs in an area outside time. It's more mystical. There's a lot of wonder, and it's not necessarily tied into our world. There is definitely something strange and wonderful about it, and it's often, it feels like it is in a time before through a romantic lens, almost. So what do we have here? We got mystical sense of wonder, often an implication of a different realm. It's imaginative, it's surreal, it's otherworldly, and the big thing for us, at least often, is that it has a very strong, almost religious, almost mythological angle. The beautiful thing about fantasy often is that it lets you play with that feeling that the people who live in this world are grasping for a way to understand why their world is the way that it is. While often in sci-fi it feels like they have the tools already to discover that, you know? So often in sci-fi people are borderline omnipotent and they have all this technology and they can go anywhere in the universe. And their problems come from without, sort of that whole, the physical disaster kind of angle and these things that happen in the universe. Fantasy often deals more, at least for me, on an emotional level. It's, why is the world this way? What are these mystical things that we don't understand? How do we survive them? How do we live alongside them? How do we cope with them? And some of the most beautiful things that we see from fantasy come from that.
Yeah. In contrast to like what we're talking about science fiction and how it's a technological response to a physical scenario, this is more of a mystical scenario, and the response is the journey, right? And the examples I have, it's like, okay, so you mentioned the religious thing, mythological. If you look at most fantasy games, there's some kind of spiritual thing where you can summon. I mean, you look at Diablo, okay, that's the devil. In Zelda, you have the goddesses, and then in God of War, it's the Greek mythology. You got Ares and Poseidon and all that.
All those other guys.
Yeah, all those other guys. Athena. And then, but also the themes in these, even though they're mythological, they range. And it's like, because you're doing fantasy, you have the ability to kind of pick whatever. And so I think it ranges from whimsical, all the way to serious and dark. So whimsical, we're looking at like Final Fantasy IX, the last good one before it got weird, to like Miyazaki stuff, right? So it's whimsical, it's fun, colorful. But if we go to...
And so much about the journey. Again,
it's about the
like
journey,
said, yeah.
And we'll get back to making fun of Final Fantasy in a
Sure,
moment. But all the way to serious and dark, we have Lord of the Rings, and which is still fun and almost whimsical when you're in the Shire, but you get to Mordor, it's much more serious. You got orcs, black blood dripping from their mouths, etc. And Pan's Labyrinth, that's pretty dark. I think,
it's dark.
I've only watched it once, and it's
or Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, very serious.
Game of Thrones.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
Pretty serious.
Yeah. So there's the range, right? And so if you're to, make up some fantasy characters, like you have the option. Just being aware of like, oh yeah, I could go, find a kind of fun and whimsical to dark, which is, my preference is definitely whimsical. What do you?
I go for whimsical usually.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing those crab creatures. Those are pretty fantasy, right?
Yeah, that's, I guess, I mean, it's weird because I like watching a lot of whimsical stuff and consuming it, but the stuff that I do for myself is often more dark.
Right.
I veer more on the dark side.
See, dark is not my comfort zone, and I think, and I've always talked about you got to step outside your comfort zone, and I think I'll be trying out some dark stuff.
It's fun.
Back to Final Fantasy real quick. Okay. Okay, the last one I played was Final Fantasy IX. I watched my brother and sister both play Final Fantasy X. It looked all right, but after that, it just... I know I'm going to upset a lot of fans, but it just...
Go on. Yes.
Yeah. It just became this boy band game, right? Where it's like these male model... Dude, by the way, Final Fantasy 15, that combat gameplay looks super fun, right? But I remember watching the Conan do the playthrough of it, or just the first beginning part, and the whole beginning part, you're just these 5 attractive dudes in leather pushing a car. I'm like, what? Where's the whimsical creatures? Where's Vivi and Quina? And that's what I liked about Final Fantasy. So to me, it sort of died.
I don't agree with you, and I can't believe you would say those things about Final Fantasy.
Just get out of my house.
Just for the record, just don't agree with you.
You're just saving your butt.
Yeah. Well, I like that all the characters are dressed in the same dark black clothes. I like that.
Okay.
That they all look the same except for their hair.
All right.
I'm on record. What's the problem?
That was perfect. Okay. All right. Now that I lost half of my subscribers.
Now that your credibility is just in the gutter.
Yeah. What? You don't like the boy band style?
Everybody hates you. Hey, but you bottomed out. Now you can say whatever you want.
Nice. All right. But it's still fantasy, right? Even though, unfortunately...
Fantasy's in the title.
They're like, oh, let's make a fantasy game, but let's make it look like our world. Why? Come on.
You know, there's a calm intent.
You have Final Fantasy IX, like every scene in that looks like it's not in our world. And so I think there's this tendency now in video games to make it look as realistic as possible. Let's even put cars in there. Let's make it look like a Rolls Royce or a Bentley, and then like let's make sure we feel like there's a gas station. No, you're missing the point here. I'm sorry, I'm going to go on a rant right now. Mm-hmm. But you know, where Final Fantasy IX, you know, you had like the steampunk world, but you also went to Vivi's village, and it was like these cool huts and stuff. You know, that takes a lot of thought, and I don't know. Of course, what they have now does take a lot of thought too, but I don't know. I think we just have different tastes. Maybe that's, but it's working though. That's the problem. That there's a demographic that loves this stuff.
That's the problem.
Of course, it's the problem. You know why it's a problem? Because I'm upset.
You seem it.
I don't think you realize, but the universe ought to revolve around me and my tastes, and so when it doesn't, I'm really upset. Yeah.
I revolve around you.
Anyway, don't take me too seriously, but I actually
seriously don't.
Come on, I'm probably going to get Final Fantasy 15 and play it anyway. Brandon, what's his name? Brandon Roberts said I could borrow it when he's done.
Oh,
yeah.
And you're gonna?
Yeah, I'm gonna play. Well, I mean, yeah, if I have time.
What if you like it?
I'm not gonna like it.
Okay, good. Make sure you don't.
I'm probably gonna like it.
You wouldn't want to grow or change.
It's so hard for me to give games a chance that I don't. But I want to judge them by their cover first.
Ooh, so much fun! You know? It's as fun as playing them.
All right, we derailed. We went really off.
I don't think we derailed. Hey, it has fantasy in the title. That's the name of the game.
But it was more about what I felt about it. Okay,
yeah, it's your show,
so,
am I right?
Rewind.
It's your show, am I right? It's your show, am I right? Right? Because the channel.
Okay.
Aldoori, right?
It's
your.
All right.
You can do it, right? Right? Right?
I'm glad you're moving to New York tomorrow.
Do you have Dayquil?
I don't have Dayquil. Are you still feeling sick?
Of course. It happens sick all day.
We came here to listen about fantasy, not about Stephen being sick. All right. So back to what makes something fantasy.
Yeah.
We talked about the production design of sci-fi things being like
it's
sleek,
hard. There's angles.
hard,
oh my god, things fit together.
Shiny.
Look at how carefully these surfaces were machined. Look at how elaborate it must have been to make these cut lines and intersections and fit them together so perfectly and all that.
Anti-gravity.
All that.
But for fantasy...
Oh, they just stuck that thing on there and it kind of fits together.
The production design typically in fantasy, we have a lot of quote-unquote handmade stuff, right?
Because there's no robots.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like Lord of the Rings, there's a lot of things that were either welded or,
someone had to make it.
Yeah, leather, stitches.
There's no kuka arms in fantasy worlds. There's no kuka arms in Game of Thrones.
No one knows what a kuka arm is. And so you have like, natural elements. You have metals, stone, Yeah, there's, some stone armor. I remember doing something for Guild Wars that was like a stone armor set. But, and bone, cloth, but things that are identifiable materials.
Yeah, often on a fantasy like character or like a building or anything like that, you can always say like, that's wood, it's plaster over brick, that's, I don't know how people make stuff, whatever. That's cloth, that's thick iron, that's something like that. You can always kind of pick things out. Where often when you're looking at sci-fi, you're like, ooh,
shiny.
whoa, it looks really cool,
Right.
which kind of works for sci-fi because it's supposed to feel like, whoa, I don't get this at all, but it's great.
Don't get us wrong. We're not like saying this is wrong. We're just making an empirical observation of what we're seeing here.
It's wrong.
Things in things in fantasy often are less manufactured, except for there are exceptions. Like if you look at Final Fantasy VII, like that's pretty sci-fi. You got like factories and whatnot.
Yeah. There's like a casino and everything in Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, and it's like that again. That brings us back to that fine line of, what will make it fantasy? Because have you heard of urban fantasy, which is like things that take place in our world but connect us to a different realm. So it's like, and that's a great example of
like
that.
Like Dresden Files and stuff like that.
Exactly, and you have things like Harry Potter, definitely fantasy. It's not like in a different realm in terms of like going to an elf world, right?
Yeah, not at all. And Harry never sexts Hermione with his iPhone or anything like that.
Yeah. Anyway, awkward pause.
How are you gonna save this one?
I'm gonna cut it out.
Good.
Anyway, but yeah. So in fantasy, what do the people look like? And because whereas sci-fi, the people are often like armored or they have like a scar, but it's like they got tech that's over it. I don't know. But in fantasy, you got humans, elves, dwarves, trolls, fairies. But these are all mostly in influenced by European mythology, fantasy. But like they're usually otherworldly realm creatures in there.
For sure, yeah.
So
and they often feel like they're. It doesn't always have to be that way, but they often feel like they're at odds because it kind of goes back to that primal, like, tribal thing that we have in our minds. Dwarves don't like elves don't like fairies, all that kind of stuff. Humans are always kind of off on their own thing. Oftentimes in sci-fi, like in Star Wars, for example, all those things kind of, it's not like they're super cool with each other, but they often coexist. They'll go to bars and stuff together because ostensibly they've been around each other forever and all that kind of thing. And a lot of those... I don't know, I guess they'd be species or something like that, like the common trope races of fantasy. They often have some kind of connection to the natural world that drives them. Fairies are magical, and dwarves live on mountains and forge things, and humans live off the land. There's always some kind of like
elemental,
very elemental
tie. And yeah, so that's a good point to have, because if you're picking fantasy for this whole contest thing, or just in general. If you were to, much like how if you start off the sci-fi thing with some kind of scenario, here it's like one option is you could do also another scenario, or you pick an element, water, wind, fire, Captain Planet stuff, right? Or like if it's in a different world, like invent a new element, perhaps, if you can do that.
Saga Man.
Yeah.
Siftil.
All right. Anyway, so, think about that.
Ermagerd.
All right. And so if you're going to do that, the temptation is to, like, look at existing art, fantasy art, and I don't know. Lately when I start something, I've resisted that urge to look at art, right? Because I think that Ian McKay would talk about this, about how he stopped looking at his influences and started looking at things that actually inspired... whatever the character is. So, I mean, if you're approaching this in a mythological aspect, you can look at different mythologies from different parts of the world, instead of focusing on fairies or something, or like kind of medieval looking armors and whatnot. Maybe if you were to go to what's the mythology of, I don't know, Mongolia or Africa, or certain tribes of African groups, and so each kind of group of humans has their own take on the mystical, celestial kind of, I don't know, I guess even religious mythology. Yeah. Start with that. You can make up your own. But if we...
And remix them, combine them, find something in there.
Designing for entertainment, you have these options to do. So it evokes a sense of mystical wonder, right? And I think the best examples of... Oh no, my screen went black.
Okay.
We're still there. Okay. Miyazaki, right? He's a guy. He's a guy. He's still living, breathing. As you cough, you're dying. Sorry. I love Miyazaki films, right? And what I like about them is they evoke that sense of wonder and curiosity, especially the childhood curiosity, where you're in the point of view of a young kid, and when you're a young kid, you're exploring, and you want to know things. And whereas earlier I mentioned science fiction being a lot about Maslow's hierarchy in terms of survival, resource gathering. In fantasy, it's usually, like you said, discovering an answer to the mystical element of whatever the case is. So in Spirited Away, she wanted to escape, but at the same time, you're understanding this other little world. And Final Fantasy, I guess...
There's always some kind of crazy preternatural thing going on in Final Fantasy.
Right.
The moon cracked open and monsters came out of it, or some horrible witch is
Sure.
monsters all over the world.
I'd say you have a lot more reign to do these things in fantasy.
For sure.
But then you start mixing the two, science fiction and fantasy, then your results are like, whoa. Legend of Zelda, right? Triforce, all that.
Darkness falls on the realm. How do we get the light back? Go
to
find the 3 triangles.
The triangles.
Go get them.
Legend of
get them.
3 triangles. But yeah, you go to the underworld, or the underworld version of where you are, Lorule, right? By the way, if you haven't played Zelda: Link Between Worlds, go play it. It's friggin' awesome.
Top 3 Zelda games right there.
Yeah, so Harry Potter evokes a sense of wonder, especially again from that childhood age, where you're going to school in a different realm and you're meeting new people and learning magic, and the mystery is like, what's going on?
How do I be a magician?
Let's use magic to...
You're a magician, Harry.
Anyway, so Narnia, different world. Name of the Wind. Talk about Name of the Wind. Go ahead.
What would I have to say about Name of the Wind?
Just talk about it.
Great fantasy series. If you haven't dived in, there's Name of the Wind and there's Wise Man's Fear. Hits probably everything that we've talked on, especially on remixing a lot of different mythologies and sort of religious angles from a lot of different parts of the world. And if you're dealing with magic or anything like that, the idea that there's consequences for using magic and consequences for your actions in these totally hypothetical worlds, it's just a great example. Beautiful story, character driven, great milieu.
I kind of wanted you to say it with more enthusiasm, but let me just say, Name of the Wind was friggin' awesome. All right, it's the Kingkiller Chronicles. We are still waiting on book 3.
It's day 3 yet.
It's by Patrick Rothfuss, and it's probably my favorite fantasy novel. And you're the one that got me into it. And it sucked because when I read it and I finished the second book, Wise Man's Fear, you're so into that world and you want more of it, and then you're just kind of like sitting there after putting the book down, staring at your ceiling for a good 4 hours, just thinking, right? And then you start to look for other books that might give you that feeling. And I tried different fantasy books, nothing comes close, right? And so anyway, that's a really great example of fantasy. It has elements of, because there's like a school, like university, but also there's, I'm not going to spoil anything.
Just cut the crap. It's beautiful. It's lyrical. Do yourself a favor and read it.
Anyway, so those are some titles that I came up with, but fairy tales, like there's that's fantasy, right? They have European roots, but there's also mythology, Greek mythology, Egyptian,
and often subtly dark.
Yeah,
nothing like a good fairy tale for a little subtle darkness in there.
Right. I mean, even Hans Christian Andersen, like when he's doing The Little Mermaid, which to me is fantasy, right? You're introducing a new creature, half human, half fish, whatever, sea creature. Anyway, but it's fantasy mythology. All right, Windows.
Yeah, nothing. Don't worry about it. That was the thing. Oh, look, you got a message on Facebook.
Don't. Anyway, so Egyptian mythology, you have like the gods Amun, Ra, all those, things that they worshipped. And Latin America, you got the chupacabra. I don't know, this bunch of stuff. I know he's not a god, but he's a mythological. He's a mythological creature that
he's not mythological. He's real.
Oh my god,
he's real.
He's not real.
He's real.
I know you're from Colombia.
He's real. And he's not. Well, he's not actually real. He's just an explanation for something that aliens legit do.
So aliens are real.
Obviously.
Oh my god.
Hey, don't listen to me, man. Talk to Stephen Hawking.
Didn't we talk about aliens in our last podcast?
Yeah, everything comes full circle, man.
I didn't even edit that one.
It's like poetry. It repeats itself.
Okay, George. I gotta There's 4 videos waiting to be edited on my computer right now.
Good, it's in the docket, baby.
Actually, I have a list of them. So Medcast, Artist Spotlight, Linedecker, and Sargent.
We doing this right now?
No, I'm just reading the list. DP1 midterm, and then the Loot Crate thing. I don't know if I'll figure it out. I don't know. We'll see.
You're cutting all that out, right?
No. Anyway, so maybe if I'm not lazy.
What were we talking about? Greek mythology?
Fantasy. So if you're doing this contest and you're thinking about like how to approach this, just think about the things that we talked about and be like, well, I don't want to go the. Me personally, you have a choice. Like I could go the sexy K-pop elf girl route.
We'd all love to see it.
Oh, come on. And it's like it serves like a, there's an audience for it, right? But if you want to,
Are you about to say it serves a purpose? What purpose?
What's
the purpose?
What I meant
though?
to say,
Uh-huh.
I'm not.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so what I'm saying is, dig a little deeper. Watch me say all this, and I just do like cliche work.
That's the end game.
That is the
That's
end
the
game.
big pun. That's the big joke.
That is the big joke. My whole channel is now a joke.
Yay!
But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. Feel free to check out the link in the description for the contest and
the art war.
The art
war.
Fantasy versus science fiction.
And win it. Don't become an art POW.
POW, because it's a war. You think there's going to be art POWs?
Yeah, and people are going to be rolling in on Art Abrams tanks and throwing art grenades. It'll be a mess.
Right.
And there'll be art Geneva conventions and stipulated ways to treat prisoners. People will violate that.
What have you done, Mark? All right. Anyway, thanks for listening. You got any last words?
Come back to me. You do yours first. I'll think of something.
That was my last.
Your last words are just asking me for last words?
Thanks for watching. Should I ask them to subscribe? No, whatever. Do whatever you want.
And the next time that you're drawing, think of me.
That's right. The next time you're drawing, think of Steven Zapata whispering in your ear, all very creepily. All right. Well, over and out. You guys
Good night,
have
everybody.
a great
Good luck.
night. Oh, the stupid Windows
I'm
thing
not going
every
to join
time.
this contest at all.
All right, bye. Otacon.
A vibrato.
What are you doing?
Nothing. I'm not doing anything.